that drive and discipline will go I mean, that's kind of the holy grail above all else, right? Like, yeah,
It is.
you're being very humble and giving a lot of credit to a lot of external factors, but at the end of the day, you were out there getting after it and it paid off. Welcome to Going In Blind. I'm your host, Zach Tidwell, and today I'm speaking with lifelong outdoorsman and CEO of Tethrd, Dan Chumbler. And to everyone at home, thank you for listening. Please take a second to help me grow the show so that I can keep delivering these conversations week after week for years to come. Subscribe, rate, and review the show in whatever podcasting app you're using right now, and check out the show notes to follow me on social media and YouTube as well. When you share your favorite episodes, tag me and use the hashtag GoingInBlind. You can also join my mailing list at zachtidwell.net. And if you know someone you think I should talk to, have them send me an email at contact.goinginblind@gmail.com. Dan, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
For sure. My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Zach.
Yeah, I actually, when I was going through your email that you sent me with the background information, I had to look up Bad Axe. I was like, there's no way that's a real town name.
Yes,
And you can
sir.
tell me about that. But for people at home, I just want to give a little context here. So some of you may have listened to, I think it was episode 10 or 11 with Guy Zuck, the world-renowned turkey caller and outdoorsman. So Dan and I got connected via Guy, and we got to talking a little bit. And as is always the case with most people that I've had on this show, I just start talking and I realize there's an interesting story behind things. And will you give people, and I'll start to work back through this timeline a little bit, but will you give people a little your quick pitch on who you are and what you're doing today?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Dan Chumbler, and I am privileged to be working with a talented group of folks in the outdoor industry for a company called Tethrd. So Tethrd really brought mainstream what is one of the more popular now, hottest new trends in whitetail deer hunting, which is saddle hunting. And I'm CEO there and just been with the company a little over a year.
Okay. And that is, I'm sure we'll probably, because I want to talk to you about hunting at some point, but I really, when I think people from the outside looking in, myself included, you hear CEO and you're like, okay, I think we get a certain perception maybe of what that is, I think. And because we see these CEOs of these huge public companies, and you think, okay, there's probably got to be a little bit of like a sociopath in there. And
Y- Sure.
obviously that's a very different scale, but you and I got talking and I was like, man, he's just a normal dude. And even after seeing your resume, the little, I mean, not literal resume, but what you sent over to me, I'm like, okay, this goes against the grain of this perception of what we have, that like these are not normal humans running these companies. So, I mean, you were in management at Polaris, then you were CEO of MeatEater, which people I think have probably that by this point heard of as a huge outdoor brand and behind Steve Rinella and a lot of his endeavors. And there was a TV show and a podcast and all these other things. But I think what's really interesting here, on top of the fact that I got this insight where I'm like, all right, Dan seems like this cool, just normal dude, and I want to pick his brain as to what this is, what that's like being a C-suite executive, but also you started as a sales rep and have worked your way all the way up the ranks over the course of your career, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And, I've also been a little dubious of these, CEO types over my career, and, I wasn't one of these people that, had that aspiration from a young age, or anything like that. I'm kind of an accidental CEO, if you will. Uh, but yeah, I most of my career, I was in sales or sales leadership, and, I really started that at a very young age, just realizing that, um, if you were motivated, generally you got rewarded for working hard. And that aspect of sales and the kind of competitiveness of sales attracted me to it. And and that's where I spent most of my career until I got to Polaris, where I had the first chance to be a general manager over some businesses. And that's when I really realized how much I enjoyed being involved in the other functional areas of running a business, everything from finance to manufacturing to marketing. And so once I got a taste of it, I really liked it. And then it was a good friend who also hosts a podcast who put the bug in my ear saying, "Hey, you've run these big businesses at Polaris. I think you're qualified to be a CEO of a smaller company." And that paved the way to my uh, uh, assignment at MeatEater, where that was my, first stint as a CEO.
Okay. And I wanna pause here and work back to it. I mean, you said some two things, I guess two things that are stuck out to me. I think first, because you did mention, okay, I got into sales young, but I know you had initially gone to college looking to become a mechanical engineer, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, that's
How
right. Yeah.
how does that digression happen or
Yeah.
that offshoot?
Yeah. Fair question. I I I was, good in math and science in high school, and so people told me, "You should be an engineer," and, I like to draw too, so there was this notion that maybe I would even be an architect or something. So I was kinda pointed in that direction, and, I started in the School of Engineering at the University of Michigan, and I realized there was a real poignant moment, Zach. I remember this professor in a Fortran engineering, programming class.
What is
There were about
sport? Is
40
that
st
an old programming language?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
It is. I'm dating myself, but, um, there were about 40 students in the class, and this professor asked how many had graduated high school with a 4.0 or higher, and me and one other guy didn't raise our hands, but all the other hands went up. And I realized at that moment I might not be in the right spot. Um, but
Was one
I
of
was
you go ahead.
I was competitive and I stuck it out for a couple of years, and but then I realized that I had just gotten enough of a taste of it in 2 years in engineering that it isn't what I wanted to do when I got out of school. So I switched and ended up with a different degree that enabled me to go into business and specifically sales.
Was it because it was too much time hunched over a desk and doing the math and the renderings for all of these things? Like what about it was made that shift in you where you realized that that's not what you wanted to do?
Um, I probably didn't know it at the time, but it was one of these things where it fits in the quadrant where it was something that I was good at but didn't enjoy. And yeah, I think you hit on part of it. I mean, I consider myself a people person. I like to be around people. I like to engage in dialogue, and I found that I enjoyed dealing with people in various capacities, and sales attracted me. So yeah, it was kind of the lure of doing something else and going into business, and the realization that even if I stuck it out and was successful, I wasn't going to enjoy it as much as maybe another path.
I think that's a common thing that people might fall into going into college where like for you, you're like, yeah, I'm good at math and I like to draw and I'm a smart dude. Like not necessarily sure what I want to do, but that seems like it might be a natural like inclination there, and then people kind of get stuck. And there's the other side of it where you're like, I just don't know what I want to do, and so I'm going to go to school for a business degree, or like I enlisted in the military instead of going to college first because I knew like, well, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up, but I know I want to go in the military, and this will give me some time to decide. But that's still, that seems to sales seems like such a hard left turn, but that makes more sense if in the context of you saying that you realize you'd like to be around people. But I mean, when you got out of college and you're selling stuff, like I know because I think you'd mentioned that you got into working for like Louisville Slugger and then selling for Callaway. Were you? Because I'm trying to think, how old are you now?
57.
Okay, so when you got out of college, I mean, this is like right at the cusp of like the internet is about to become a thing, right? When you're starting your career. So were you going door to door selling, so like not literally door to door, but like door to door, but to these different sporting businesses?
Yeah, so when I started with Louisville Slugger, which was my first job out of college, I was in a what they called a sales training program, but it was really a glorified customer service role. So I was working the phones from our offices in Louisville, and I would take calls from both what they called bat and golf shops. So the bat shops were these independent sporting goods stores, which mostly aren't around anymore. And they were accounts that started with a one, and then the accounts that started with a two were power built golf accounts. So we were just dealing with retailers. Some were pro shops, so they may be a shop on a golf course, or these independent sporting goods stores that sold baseball goods. So it was baseball and golf from the phones in Louisville.
Hmm.
And
And
then
that,
I had the chance and interviewed for an open territory, which was on the golf side, based out of Northern Virginia. So it was a power built golf territory, and I called directly face to face on those golf shops. So imagine these golf courses, whether it be a public golf course, some on military bases, or private golf clubs and retail shops that carry golf equipment in Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, and DC.
and this whole time, like, did you, I know you're an outdoorsman. Were you a hunter growing up?
I was, yeah. I grew up in Bad Axe, Michigan, as you mentioned, and hunted with my dad and two brothers.
So like, I mean, this whole time, because again, the one of the other things you said earlier was like essentially that climbing that corporate ladder wasn't necessarily your plan, and that wasn't something you were necessarily aspiring to do. So like, but seeing where you went, I mean, I would like how this whole time, like, because yes, you'd like to deal with people, but that seems like very, like I said, I have already said, a left turn from mechanical engineering, very different from being out hunting or fishing and out in the woods and all these other things. And eventually you end up at Polaris. Like, how does that all play into each other as you do start to climb the ranks?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm competitive. I really enjoy competing, and so it really probably started in earnest when I took that outside sales rep job for Powerbilt, because they said, "Oh, this territory is really tough. We've had 3 or 4 reps in 5 or 6 years, and the retailers you're calling on are really difficult. The territory has gone down in sales." And I was like, "Oh, let me at it." I was just so anxious to prove myself. And so I was committed. I remember, I worked every day. I worked 7 days. I was young, it was early career, and this was my first chance to, to go out and prove myself. And so that's what I wanted to do. And I remember distinctly the first sales meeting I attended, where I hadn't been in the territory for a year yet. I had just been there for a few months, so I wasn't eligible for any of the awards they gave. And I was like, "Oh, that's gonna be me." I remember when Chris Catapane got the award for Sales Rep of the Year. That's burned in my memory, and for the next 364 days, I was set on that, and sure enough, I was the one getting handed the crystal a year later.
Were you married already when you were out there busting your ass like that?
No, no,
Okay.
so I was single and like I said, early career, so I could just jump in with both feet, which is what I did, and just work really hard, and, um, so it was that recognition as sales rep of the year and a sales contest that I won that earned the attention, kind of garnered the attention from the folks at Callaway Golf, where I was given a territory, and that was a bigger company that was really growing fast, and again, I kind of applied the same formula, just good old fashioned hard work to grow my territory, and that led to another opportunity. So I became um, very goal oriented. Maybe was already goal oriented, but I set goals and set about trying to achieve them. And what I found was with focus and hard work that opportunities kind of came my way. So I guess no magic formula by any means, but that's the path that allowed me to take on increasing levels of responsibility over my career.
I'm always curious with this because I'm definitely very I I think you could use these interchangeably here between task and goal oriented, where, if I decide there's something I want to do, I'm going to do it. I wanted to write a book, so I wrote a book. I've wanted to create software that everyone could use, whether or not they had a disability. So I taught myself how to code. I've done that. And now I'm working on my second thing here that I think is going to turn into a true startup. But like I don't have an incremental goal in those things. It's just I know what the end result is, and I will do what needs to be done to make that happen. But it sounds maybe like you could, and you hear people talk about this, like the SMART goals, like your or your specific,
Yeah.
measurable, attainable. Like, are you talking with goals for you? Is it more of a, okay, this month I'm doing X thing, and next month I will do Y thing?
Yeah, I think that, first of all, I'm humbled by everything you've done. I mean, in the way you just summarized it, you didn't give yourself near enough credit. So, I aspire to set lofty aspirations as you have. But that being
Thanks.
said, that's one of the things that attracted me to sales, Zach, is there's a scoreboard, right? So results matter, delivering numbers and results matter. So it was kind of mapped out for you, if you will. There's a goal, go hit it.
With defined
And
metrics along the way. Yeah.
yeah, very, very much so. And so that, in a way, made that path easy, okay, here's your territory goal. And I had fun, like, doubling my territory volume and, like, growing it, and then they would split my territory and send in another sales rep to cover part of it because we had grown it to a certain level, and part of that was, hey, I was fortunate, right place at the right
Yeah.
time with a company that invested in R&D and was growing. But if you took like the momentum the company had and the products they came out with, and then put hard work behind it, you could really do some cool things. So that's kind of how it went. But yeah, I think that the goals you've set, again, like big, audacious goals, are really an inspiration.
But like you, like for you, yeah, well, it wasn't like, it was more like, okay, I want that. I want to be the one at that podium next year,
Yeah.
not these small, the measurable, the SMART goals that people talk about.
Not so much, right,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
I knew that just, hard work and just doing more than what was expected of me. I had incredible mentors along the way. At Louisville Slugger, there's a guy by the name of Dick Sawyer who was wrapping up his career as I was starting mine, and he gave me all kinds of great advice. My parents were incredible role models for me. I had bosses when I was young and growing up working on a golf course, that set great examples for me. So I had all kinds of modeling to learn from, and you couple that with a little motivation, competitiveness, and it worked out.
And that drive and discipline will go I mean, that's kind of the holy grail above all else, right? Like, yeah,
It is.
you're being very humble and giving a lot of credit to a lot of external factors, but at the end of the day, you were out there getting after it and it paid off.
Well, and from my perspective, there were people in the golf industry at the time when I was, early career where it was like this sport of leisure and it was like a fun thing. And um, I saw it as that, but I also saw it as a means to an end. And I don't think it was that hard to stand out if you just literally worked very hard, did what you said you were going to do, and then took care of your customers. It really some really simple tenants, um, and and I've been so fortunate because I chose a career in golf to start because it was something I knew a little bit about, and I thought that if I was going to be selling something, why not sell something that I was interested in? And I also thought at the time that if I didn't like it, I would be around successful people because I found that really successful business people played golf. And I thought, well, I may end up in a different industry altogether. But lo and behold, I spent 20 years in the golf industry. Um, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Even that though, man, I mean, you've risen through the ranks and then eventually, first of all, working at Polaris sounds like it would be freaking sweet. That just that seems like it'd be a cool place to work. But yeah, you rise to management and I don't have any corporate experience. I had the military. I was in college for nursing and working at a hospital when I shot myself. And then like ever since then, it's been college and then I dropped out to do stuff on my own and started doing the coding stuff. Like it's so foreign to me and I'm so curious about it. I think partially because of the environment, but also like people people from the outside looking in at the military who haven't been in the military think like, okay, well, you learned how to lead. You're like, you learn how to execute a mission and how to get things done, but the way that you there's no people talk about soft skills. Like there's no soft skills. It is, hey, motherfucker, get over here. Like you're going to do this or I'm gonna fuck you up kind of thing. And like you will get the job done or there will be consequences. And obviously that's not how it's handled in the civilian world when you're doing these things. So that jump for you to actually you said you were a GM over at Polaris.
Right. Yeah. When I started at Polaris, I was a sales leader, so I stayed in my same kind of functional area. But I'm forever grateful for the leaders at Polaris who gave me an opportunity to step into this general management role, and it was just a big challenge for me, first of all. But I enjoyed it so much. I learned so much. And yeah, it was really a great opportunity. I mean, it's I would have never had the opportunity to be a CEO had I not been a general manager, as was given the opportunity to me at Polaris. So I'm very grateful.
Do you say that because of the basic like the experience that you gained there?
Yes, for sure. And I have been so fortunate through my career. I mean, you talk about, hey, it must have been fun working at Polaris. Of course it was. My entire career has been with brands that make toys for adults. basically.
That's a great
And
way to put that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, how much, I mean, and I've been to incredible places and got to meet just fascinating people, celebrities, and just people from all walks of life, that I'd have never had the chance had I chose a different path. So it was great. And like what you're alluding to with Polaris, like we had access to all these vehicles. So Polaris believes strongly in um, encouraging their employees to enjoy the riding experience. So whether it's snowmobiles or motorcycles or side by sides or ATVs, all employees at Polaris have an opportunity to participate in various programs that allow you to ride and to get vehicles for use. And that is an incredible benefit. Some of my greatest memories are going to hockey tournaments with my son and taking snowmobiles along with us and hitting the trails between games
What?
in northern Minnesota. Yeah, just really a blast.
That that sounds so incredible. I've only gotten to snowmobile a couple times, and then I actually there's an organization called Oscar Mike. Like Oscar Mike in the military is like I'm on that's like we're on the move, right? And you come over the comms and all right, we're Oscar Mike and you're rolling, you're heading somewhere.
Right.
This organization has it's for disabled vets to get out and get to do adaptive stuff, but they do it a little differently. So like yeah, I went out there and we got to skydive, and one of the other things that we got to do was they had a racetrack through the woods and a couple turbocharged Polaris Razors, and they let me drive that thing through the woods with one of the employees on staff just yelling at me from the passenger seat, and it was I had never
Wow.
been in one of those things before, man, but it was so much fun. I'd ridden motorcycles and I got into motorcycles as an adult while I was in the Marines and like post Marines for the short period that I had where I could still drive. But dude, those machines are incredible.
They really are. Like, you talk about the razor, and I remember my first big management meeting, and we were in Austin, Texas, and it was raining, so it was a really muddy course, and the instructor was describing the course, and, I was a pretty new rider, and here you had these incredible machines, and he was like, "You're gonna get to some very visually intimidating terrain, just point the machine in the right direction and let it do its thing." And that
Wow.
man, it was a blast. It was as much fun as you can ever have while still working.
I bet even I get for you having some experience in mechanical engineering. I would imagine that's like that, even that gets your wheels turning a little bit. That's a bad metaphor given the fact that we're talking about off-road
Yeah,
machines,
no,
but
that was pretty clever. Yeah.
I didn't mean it that way. I just said it. And then I was like, that is corny. But
No, that's great, and it was, like, the engineering team at Polaris is it's world class, and, the things that they were able to do year in, year out with suspensions and just the vehicle design, it really blows your mind. The thing that I could never get over, like snowmobiles, using those as the example, um, I would get a couple of units that I could use as management units, and it was my favorite day where I would call my son on the way home from work and say, "Hey, I need your help with something," and I could just hear the sigh at the other end, like, "Oh, what are you going to ask me to do now?" I said, I need your help unloading a couple of snowmobiles," and he would be waiting by the road and we would ride right away, and these machines just look so high tech and just incredible, and then somehow, some way, 1 year later, they looked old compared to the new ones, right?
just
Like,
constantly
these
evolving.
engineers found a way to come up with better designs and more features and year after year. So yeah, really, really incredible. And I thoroughly enjoyed my time at Polaris.
And then that opened the door for what I would imagine is probably one of like the most idyllic jobs that a hunter could get. Running meat eater.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was dream job for sure. It was great. And once again, I had the opportunity to work with an incredibly talented group. Steve is best known. When you think of MeatEater, you think of Steven Ranella, but there's a really talented team around him. And it's really a cool business model where, Steve had the show that ran on the Outdoor Channel and the Sportsman's Channel, and of course on Netflix. And so that's what really brought MeatEater mainstream. But then there are all these other facets of the business. You mentioned the podcast and several podcasts. So it's a podcast network. It's all kinds of content served through various channels, whether it be their YouTube channel and other distribution channels. And then never mind that Steve is a New York Times bestselling author.
Well, he's
Um,
a good communicator, spoken
oh,
as well.
incredible. And
Yeah.
and so the publishing business is big. And then MeatEater became a platform by acquiring First Light, FHF gear, Phelps game calls, and Dave Smith decoys. So they really created an incredible business model, and yeah, I enjoyed that very much.
Was it already more than just a media company when you came on board?
It was, yeah. So I joined in
Oh,
2020 during COVID, and they had acquired First Light and FHF gear. So while I was there, we acquired a couple other brands with Phelps game calls um, and Dave Smith decoys. So we kind of built on the foundation that was already underway.
wow. So, well, I guess that kind of shoots a hole in one of my questions. I was curious to ask you about, like, okay, yeah, you've gone sales to this outdoor brand and now you're at an outdoor media brand, but it was already more than that. So, I mean, when you're at the head of a company like that and you guys are buying up and devouring other companies, literally, like how does that play out? How does that even get brought to the table in terms of a discussion internally and then getting moved into an actual movement?
Sure. Yeah. Well, you know, Steve had a lot of relationships with brands within the space because it was just products that he used. So he had a relationship with the folks at First Light because he liked their gear. And so that enabled a partnership, which later moved into a more meaningful partnership with an acquisition. So
Uh,
I would tell you that's, it was really relatively organic. I mean, we were intentional about it, and we were talking with lots of brands about potential partnerships. Sometimes they worked out and other times they didn't. Tethrd was one of those companies at the time when I was at MeatEater because I had become a saddle hunter while working for Polaris. So I had familiarity with the brand and really enjoyed the product. So it kind of passed that threshold test. Is it gear that we would use and really endorse? And the other brands that are part of the MeatEater portfolio all began that same way.
mm, when and we'll move into tethered here, but I wanted to ask too, in software acquisitions for small companies. I mean, I don't know what it looks like for giant enterprise companies, but when you see like independent developers or small startups building a product, getting it to market and getting product market fit, and then actually starting to make waves to the point that a bigger company comes along, they will typically, you're selling the company on some multiple of your annual revenue. Is that how it works with more physical companies like that too?
Yes, it's either a multiple of the annual revenue or a multiple of their profitability or their EBITDA. So yeah, generally there's a valuation that you agree to that's determined from the business, either again the annual revenues or the profitability.
Okay. And so like you guys would reach out, like MeatEater went to First Light and is like, hey, we would like to absorb you. And that's how those discussions open up.
More or less. That's
Okay.
right.
How long is that process between? I mean, I would imagine the dealing with lawyers and actually getting all of that structured and able to happen. And then not to mention the actual physical turnover. Is that like a years long process? What are we talking?
Yeah, it can take years. In some cases, months. Um, but generally years. It depends on the size of the business and the motivation and timing. Lots of factors play in. But anywhere from start to finish, I would say 6 to 9 months at the earliest, to a year and a half.
Okay. And so if you went there 2020 or were at MeatEater in 2020, you've been at Tethrd for about a year. So that takes us through to 20 end of 2023 into 2024-ish. But Tethrd came onto your radar while you were at MeatEater, is what you were saying?
Well, I actually met one of the co-owners, co-founders in 2019, before MeatEater. I was working for Polaris, and I was really a passionate archery hunter. I didn't grow up archery hunting. I took it up as an adult, but I really fell in love with it.
And
And I found that it opened up access to properties that couldn't be hunted with a firearm. So I was living in the western suburbs of Minneapolis at the time, and I wrote local landowners who had, you know, as little as 5 acres or more requesting permission to hunt. And I found that I was able to have some success. So eventually, over the course of a few years, I gained access to a dozen properties. And I came to the realization that if I bought tree stands that would accommodate different wind directions and different approaches, I was going to own like 36 tree stands. I thought, well, that's crazy. And these landowners probably don't want these big chunks of metal all over their property just hanging there. So um, I started doing research and learned about this relatively new style of hunting called saddle hunting. And the truth was, it had been around for a number of years, but just with fringe players, but it was gaining popularity all of a sudden. So this is spring of 19, and
And
I,
can you
I,
can you
yeah, go ahead.
explain the difference? Because some people aren't going to know tree stands, what they are, and I didn't know what saddle hunting was until you and I spoke a couple months ago. So will you explain both of those things as you go through this?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So most white-tailed deer hunters, when I say most, roughly 80% hunt from an elevated position. And the most popular way to do that is through tree stands. And there are a few different styles of tree stands. There are ladder stands where it's a big ladder tipped up against a tree with a platform on it and a seat. There are hang-on stands that you have a different way to get up the tree, and then the stand itself hangs on the tree. Or there are climbers that you can actually use as a tool to get up the tree, and it serves as both your stand and your way to get up the tree. Saddle hunting utilizes climbing sticks as the method to get to altitude, to get to an elevation, um, and um, and then a very small platform, which is a place to put your feet, and then a harness type device, which is called a hunting saddle, that has a bridge and a tether where you attach it to the tree. And the difference between saddle hunting and those other methods is saddle hunting is safer in that you are connected to the tree all the way up and all the way down. It's more mobile in that it's much lighter. It's a piece of material as opposed to a big, heavy piece of metal. And it is more effective in that it gives you versatility to move around the trees. So as an archery hunter, you can hunt from an elevated position and shoot all the way around the tree. So your effective range is 360 degrees, whereas with most tree stands, you can't shoot directly behind you. So there's a portion of the woods you can't cover. So um, that's a high level overview of tree stands versus saddles.
And it's so like when you first described the saddle to me, and specifically that you have 360 degrees of freedom there. And I like was like able to, and I'm not a hunter, but was like able to picture and get this rush of like what it must be like to hear these branches cracking and then see a buck starting to kind of like cruise along through the woods and come your way and then walk right under you. And I don't know if it's that if it's ever that cartoonish when it happens, but just like it has to be just pulling on some primal strings when it's just you and this tree and this animal that you're out there hunting,
No
passing
doubt.
through.
Oh, Zach, you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's such a thrill, and it is. And the thing about when you're hunting mature whitetail, it's hard. When you're archery hunting, you got to get close to the animal, and that's part of the attraction is that challenge. Um, and saddle hunting gives you the versatility where if you pick the wrong tree and you notice that deer are moving down in a creek bottom or on a ridge nearby, you can climb down and move. And it's that versatility that really separates it from other methodologies. So, yeah, I started saddle hunting in 2019 almost out of necessity. And I just fell in love with it. And I was like, oh, this is just a better way to do it. And so, yeah, that continued, during my time at MeatEater, and what I found was these experts, like Tony Peterson and Mark Kenyon and Clay Newcomb and Giannis Patelis, who are all known as the crew at MeatEater, they saw the same thing. And so we shared that in common is that we all became saddle hunters and saw that it was just a more effective methodology. And so, yeah, I had great admiration for the business that Greg Godfrey and Ernie Power built at Tethrd. And when I transitioned from MeatEater and continued talking with them, and they said, "Hey, we need some help getting to the next phase here," I jumped at the chance.
And if I remember correctly, when we spoke a couple months ago, I don't remember if you said this was tethered specifically or if this was saddle hunting in general, but that arose either A or B there arose from, or was at least adapted from line workers, right? In the way that they would climb these telephone poles.
Yeah, so it's crazy. Again, there were a couple of companies, I think it was called the Anderson Tree Sling or something. There were these just a handful, I would say, of saddle hunters out there doing it. One of the founders of Tether, Ernie Power, was going to school in southern Minnesota when in college, and he, by the way, is a real engineer. He stuck it out and has an advanced degree in engineering. He um, and but he had while he was going to college, a tornado ripped through the city and really wrecked the entire town, and the only work he could find was working for the tree trimmer who was working on cleaning up the city. And so he was doing tree trimming from a sling that is very similar to the design that we eventually came up with at Tethrd. So he got his experience scaling these trees to trim limbs. And eventually he started it as like a temporary gig, but then ended up going back to it. So he spent years in as a as his profession, and later met with a group of like-minded, crazy saddle hunters on this forum, and they became the founding fathers of Tethrd. And the
The
reason they got together was to build product to use for themselves because it wasn't available on the market. And so they built these saddles and platforms and climbing sticks for their own use, and then realized that there was a market.
just some country bubbas on the
Yeah,
internet tweaking these
exactly.
designs.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
is so cool. And so today, I mean, how big is the company?
Yeah, so we believe we're the leader in the industry. There are several other companies that are saddle companies
So
making similar products.
you
Uh,
identify as the leader in the industry?
yes, yes. We, we really, I think I think I can humbly say we're responsible for bringing saddle hunting mainstream, and popularizing it. And we've grown every year since the company started in 2018, and we have 36 full-time employees today,
Wow, that's a
at
lot.
our yeah, and our offices and our shop and are right in Columbia, Tennessee, south of Nashville.
Wow. And you're wearing a camouflage suit right now?
No, but I did shoot my bow this morning in the shop.
Okay.
So we have a little retail area in the front of our building, and so we invite anybody who's in and around the Nashville area to come and see us. If you want to check out saddles and demo them, which is had I not had that opportunity, I probably wouldn't be saddle hunting, but I sought out Tethrd when I heard about this new style of hunting, and I went to the Minnesota Deer and Turkey Classic and met Ernie Power, and the rest is history. I became a customer that day, and and I just watched, you know, their success over the years, over those years. So I didn't join the company until officially until February of 24. So I've been saddle hunting 6 years now, and have been convinced that it's just a better way to do it.
Well, and that would be almost a little insane to have the CEO not be someone who believes in that product and like actually uses it.
Yeah,
The
I think you're right. Yeah. It's really important. And again, I've been so blessed to be in this enthusiast space, whether it was golf or power sports, or in our case now hunting, where people are really passionate about the pursuit, and they love gear and innovation, and we're really proud of the fact that we have 20 some odd patents for various design elements of our products. So the team is incredibly talented, and is always looking for ways to make gear that's lighter, more effective, more comfortable, whatever it may be. And we've been recognized with patents and recognized with awards. We're this year at the Archery Trade Association show, we got our third award for best new product. So we've been really fortunate to have the efforts of our great team recognized with those awards. So it's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome. I got one more burning question for you about Tethered before we start to bring this thing to a close.
Sure.
Who the hell decided that spelling the name wrong was the right way to go?
I am so glad I don't have to take the blame for that,
Okay.
but
It's like
I think we
very
can.
tech industry,
Yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah. He'd kill me, but I'm going to tell you anyway. It's Greg Godfrey, but I'm so impressed, and the reason I wanted to join this team is because of their talent. Like Greg is Greg was, by the way, a captain in the Army. So he was at active duty when he co-founded Tethrd, um, and then eventually moved to Tethrd full time. But he is an incredible marketing mind and a great brand builder. And that's what's been so cool to watch this company grow is they had this innovative product and um, incredible branding chops too. So it's never just one thing. I mean, it's sometimes works, but it's rare to only have a great product or only have a marketing story. You kind of need both to make it work. And Tethered kind of found that magic with Greg and Ernie coming together to start the company.
That's awesome. And I mean, that is such a cool story behind it of just, I saw a need and then connected with all these other weirdos online and started putting this thing together. But
That's right.
I mean, by all measures, it sounds like you guys are doing awesome. Are you guys looking to hire right now? Are you looking to sponsor any blind Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu athletes? What do you?
Well, hey, I would love to have you become a saddle hunter, Zach, and so yeah, we'll definitely sponsor you. But yeah, we are continuing to grow. We just hired a CFO, really talented guy that I'd worked with before, and we are. We're continued to expand. So a lot of our business is done direct to our customers through tether.com. But a really fast growing aspect of our business is our wholesale channel. So we sell through retailers like Shields, and we're taking on Bass Pro and Cabela's, who will be a new customer for us this year, Sportsman's Warehouse and Dunham's. And so we sell through those national chains, but we also sell through independent archery shops across the country. So they've done a really nice job for us in recent years of kind of exposing saddle hunting to more hunters because just like you, there's a lot of people who hadn't heard of it before and it's new and it's a little foreign. So it's important that people get knowledge of how to do it safely. And so we've got great partners that have helped spread that message for us.
Have you guys gotten started to grow outside of the country yet?
Um, Canada, yes.
Okay.
So, but we have had the challenge of not having enough product to meet existing demand
Yeah.
here in the US. So we have, I guess, our growth globally has been a little hampered as we've tried to scale, but we've had great supply partners who have helped grow with us and enable our growth. So yeah, our long range plan do include growth outside the U.S.
What a great problem to have. There,
For
we can't
sure.
keep up with demand. So you said that's at tether.com and that is Tethrd, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, we can thank Craig for that. That's
Yep.
right.
So what else? Where I'll have a link to that in the show notes. Do you have anything else you want to put out there before we wrap this up?
Zach, I just I'm inspired by your story. I'm just humbled to be part of your podcast, and I just really enjoyed my conversation with you today. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing your path, and I hope someone hears that and decides to start getting a little more serious about their job and actually pursuing what they want and putting in the time because people know that that's what needs to be done is that hustle and that grind, but people just don't want to do it. So they ask, okay, well, how do I do that? And that's how. Just get out there and do it. So thank you again. And thanks everyone at home for listening to another episode of Going In Blind. Please take a second to rate and review the show wherever you listen, and then share this episode around.